It was supposed to be just another dazzling day at SeaWorld Orlando. The sun was out, the music echoed, families laughed, cameras flashed, and in the center of it all, under the blinding lights and choreographed spectacle, stood Dawn Brancheau, the park's most beloved orca trainer. Calm, confident, smiling. Beside her, a creature weighing over 12,000 pounds sliced through the water like a ghost. Tychum, the star, the legend, the predator. What happened next was not a trick, not part of the show. It was a brutal moment that shattered the illusion forever. Because on February 24, 2010, as hundreds watched from their seats in frozen horror, Tychum lunged, pulling Dawn beneath the surface and into a deadly dance she would never escape. It was over in minutes, but its impact would ripple for years. This is not just a story about a tragic death. It's a warning ignored, a bond betrayed, a system built on spectacle finally cracking. Today on Animal Attack Archives, we're going to tell you what really happened that day, behind the glass, beneath the surface, and why it matters more than ever. If stories like this move you, if you believe in truth, in accountability, and in giving voice to the voiceless, then please like this video, subscribe to Animal Attack Archives, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's begin. Long before she ever stepped into a wetsuit, before the crowds, the lights, and the 6-ton whales, Dawn Brancheau was just a little girl from Indiana, staring at a television screen, mesmerized by the ocean. While other kids were watching cartoons, Dawn was rewinding VHS tapes of dolphin documentaries. She didn't want dolls. She wanted books about marine life. By the time she was 10, she could name every species of whale in the North Atlantic. She could mimic orca calls with uncanny accuracy, practicing them in front of her mirror while her siblings laughed down the hallway. But to Dawn, it wasn't just fascination. It was connection. Where others saw animals, she saw emotion. Where others saw teeth and size, she saw intelligence and beauty. At 16, while her friends were working mall jobs, Dawn was volunteering at a local aquarium. She cleaned algae from tanks, charted feeding behaviors, and asked questions that startled even seasoned biologists. Her passion wasn't loud. It was steady, grounded, and impossible to ignore. She pursued marine biology at the University of South Carolina and graduated with honors. But grades were never her goal. She wanted to understand the creatures she had loved since childhood, to speak their language, not command it. Not long after graduation, SeaWorld came calling. To many, working with orcas at the world's most famous marine park was the pinnacle of achievement. To Dawn, it was purpose, destiny. The little girl who once whispered whale sounds in her bedroom was now standing inches away from the real thing, eye to eye with giants. And those giants responded. Trainers noticed it right away. How orcas leaned in when she approached, how they followed her gaze, how even the most unpredictable animals seemed calmer in her presence. Dawn didn't dominate. She listened. She adapted. Her approach was quiet but commanding, never forced, never afraid. She believed in coexistence. "They don't perform for us," she once told a colleague. "We work together." That belief would define her career. It would earn her respect, admiration, and eventually the lead role in SeaWorld's signature orca shows. Visitors knew her name. New trainers studied her techniques. But even as her star rose, there were whispers beneath the surface, warnings about the animals she loved most. And while Dawn trusted in the bond she'd built, she didn't yet know that one of those bonds was slowly, silently breaking. To the world, SeaWorld was magic. Where else could a child stand within arm's reach of a killer whale? Where else did water shimmer under lights? Whales danced on cue and humans rode dorsal fins like they were born to do it. For families visiting Orlando, SeaWorld was not just a theme park. It was a dream wrapped in splash zones and synchronized flips. To Dawn, it had once been that dream too. But over time, she began to see what most visitors never would. Behind every breathtaking jump, there was a routine rehearsed to exhaustion. Behind every playful splash, there was an animal whose life had been reduced to concrete walls and scheduled feedings. SeaWorld Orlando stretched over 200 acres, a kingdom of steel tanks, artificial lagoons, and performance arenas. Its crown jewel was the Orca Stadium, HORRIFYING Stadium, named after a long-dead whale-turned brand symbol. The shows were loud, exhilarating, and scripted to perfection. Music blared. Trainers smiled. Whales leapt in harmony, and the audience cheered in awe. But behind the curtain, not everything sparkled. Trainers whispered about injuries, some public, many not. Incident reports were filed quietly, sometimes buried deep within internal logs. There were warning signs. Missed cues, sudden aggression, or eerie moments of total stillness before a show. But the crowds kept coming, and so the show went on. And then there was Tychum, the largest orca in captivity. 22 feet long, 12,000 pounds of muscle and memory. Captured off the coast of Iceland as a calf. Shipped across oceans. Transferred from park to park. Always performing, always watched. But Tychum didn't just carry the weight of his body. He carried history. In 1991, a young trainer named Kelty Burns slipped into the pool with Tychum and 2 other whales. She never resurfaced. In 1999, a man was found dead, draped naked across Tychum's back after breaking into the park overnight. 2 deaths, 2 tragedies, both tied to the same whale. Yet Tychum remained in the lineup. He was too valuable, too famous, too big to fail. His image was on brochures. His breeches sold tickets. And perhaps most dangerously, he trusted Dawn, or at least he once did. Despite his history, despite his size and unpredictability, Tychum continued performing. Not because he was safe, but because he was profitable. Dawn knew all of this. She had read the reports. She'd seen the scars on Tychum's skin and felt the unease ripple through the team when he hesitated before a command. But still, she believed in him, in the work, in the fragile balance between risk and reward. What she couldn't have known, what none of them could, was that the balance was shifting. And under the surface, something dark had already begun to stir. Among all the trainers at SeaWorld, Dawn Brancheau had a presence that set her apart. Not because she commanded fear or obedience, but because she exuded trust. Her bond with the Orcas wasn't built through force. It was built through time, patience, and a kind of understanding that words couldn't capture. And with Tychum, that bond ran deepest. He was massive, a force of nature encased in muscle and scars. But when Dawn stood beside him, he seemed different, calmer, slower. He responded to her hand signals with grace, accepted her presence like an old friend, and swam closer when she called his name. Other trainers admired the connection and envied it. To outsiders, it looked magical, a woman and a predator synchronized in purpose. But even magic has its flaws. Tychum's size alone made him dangerous. He couldn't participate in water work, the close contact routines involving humans in the water, because of his violent history. And yet he remained a central figure in dry stage performances. Dawn had worked with him for years. She knew his moods, read his rhythms, or at least she thought she did. Then, in the weeks leading up to that fateful day, something changed. Tychum began floating for hours at a time, unmoving, eyes barely blinking. Trainers called it logging, a behavior often linked to boredom or psychological distress. He ignored cues more frequently. His jaw popping increased, a gesture in Orca language that could signal irritation, dominance, or even a threat. Some staff noticed. A few raised concerns. But there had been oddities before and nothing had happened. So once again, the warning signs were noted and dismissed. Dawn, ever composed, trusted the relationship she had built. She believed in consistency, in reinforcement, in the idea that if she stayed steady, so would he. It wasn't naivety. It was conviction. Years of shared routines, glances exchanged, behavior shaped through repetition and reward. She believed she could sense a shift before it turned dangerous. But animals don't always announce their breaking points. Behind Tychum's still eyes was a world no human could truly enter. One shaped by decades of confinement, trauma, and forced performance. Whatever bond existed between him and Dawn was real, but it was also resting on a razor's edge. The line between trust and instinct is thinner than most dare to admit. And beneath the surface, that line was beginning to fray.